Well, back here in the States this morning, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments over President Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook.
Yeah, Cook is fighting allegations of mortgage fraud. She has not been charged with any crime and denies any wrongdoing. She remains in her job for now. This case has major implications for the scope of presidential power over independent agencies. If the court rules in Trump's favor, it could lower the bar significantly for removing a Fed official.
All right, time now for the exchange. Let's discuss this pivotal case with Natasha Sarin, professor of law at the Yale Law School. Natasha, it is good to see you. Interesting that Fed Chair Powell was also in the courtroom today, an unprecedented step. We're using that word almost daily now, if not hourly, but this coming after, again, word last week that an investigation by the DOJ into the Fed chair was underway. In this session, by all appearances, it was about 2 hours and seemed to be very rough in terms of the administration's arguments for the justification over the president's attempt to fire Lisa Cook. Just talk about why, out of all of the issues that have come before this Supreme Court, the Fed seems to stand separately as an independent entity, even in the eyes of the Supreme Court, and why that is so sacrosanct, apparently, even for them.
Yeah, and this is a case that is about a mortgage fraud allegation, but it's really about so much more than that. It's about the independence of our central bank, which is sort of one of the underpinnings of our economic security. And I think that's something that this Supreme Court realizes. In fact, it's something that they went out of their way in a case that had nothing to do with the Federal Reserve to state explicitly in a previous term, which is that the Fed has this unique structure. They've called it this quasi-private public structure. That means that where in other cases the court has been skeptical of infringing upon the president's power to remove at-will officers that are politically appointed, in the Federal Reserve's case, there has been a sort of concern that allowing too much power of the executive over the Federal Reserve kind of threatens to undermine this special status. And that's something you heard in oral argument today referenced time and time again by Lisa Cook's lawyers, which is that whatever the case may be with respect to this particular provision, this sacrosanct nature of the central bank and the importance of its independence is something that this court should take very seriously as it decides to weigh in on this case.
Yeah, absolutely, because one of the things that we've talked about time and time again is Trump's goal, just in terms of reshaping the Fed board and this idea of who he might end up choosing to replace Lisa Cook with. And obviously that goes to the heart, as you just intimated there, to the independence of the Fed and the importance of that independence, because obviously the Federal Reserve has to be able to make monetary policy decisions in order to fight inflation without any pressure from the executive branch. So if the court ends up ruling against Cook in this case, what is at stake, Natasha?
Yeah, and I think that's, by the way, why you saw Chair Powell in the room. This is a case that is about the fact that the central bank must be free to make decisions about the interest rate trajectory that are informed by its dual mandate. It cares about employment and it cares about inflation, and it cares about nothing else, not the political whims of any particular executive, nor what's most conducive to trying to get politicians elected in the next cycle. And if the court decides to rule against Lisa Cook in this case is about whether or not a particular allegation meets the bar for for-cause removal. But what it's really about is about whether or not the executive is going to be able to have the authority to try and reshape the constitution of the Federal Reserve in order to effectuate his political whims. And a ruling against Lisa Cook in this case is going to be moving us in the direction of a less independent and a more politically motivated central bank. And I think that's why you heard in oral argument a lot of skepticism from the justices that was directionally where we might want to land.
And of course, all of this coming as we're waiting to hear the Supreme Court decide on whether the president's use, the executive office's use of tariffs, the way the president has imposed them, are in fact legal. You and many others have suggested that is not the case, that the power of the purse remains with Congress. What are you expecting to hear from the Supreme Court, and are you surprised that we have yet to hear from them on this case?
You know, it's so interesting. I think we're about to see a series of kind of blockbuster moments with respect to economic policy, because we're going to get a decision on tariffs from the Supreme Court. We're also going to get a new nominee for the Federal Reserve to be chair when Chair Powell's term expires in May. And you heard the president say this week that that is likely to come in the next week, certainly before the end of the month. And I think these moments are so interesting from the Supreme Court's perspective, because this is a court that in large part has been very keen to embrace a view of the executive as very powerful. And it's sort of this like unitary executive theory that the executive has a lot of authority, that the president has a lot of authority to shape policy and to shape the contours of his administration. But in these particular settings, with respect to these really broad-based economic powers that are at play in this tariffs case, but also with respect to the Federal Reserve's centrality in our economic policy, I think these are two cases where this court, even though it embraces this broad idea of presidential authority, is likely to have a little bit of skepticism about whether or not Congress actually intended to give such broad powers to the president. And I suspect that in the tariffs case, if you listen to oral argument, you also heard a fair degree of skepticism that this type of authority should sit with the president.
Yeah, rare that you have so many world leaders and business titans waiting anxiously for the Fed to rule specifically on this tariffs case. Natasha Sarin, thank you so much. Good to see you.